The moment the guards finished their cell inspection, the prisoners jammed a stool against the door. They drew the curtains to block the view from outside, then moved the bedboards aside and got ready for their escape operation, taking turns digging the tunnel below. To keep whoever was down there safe, they tied a rope to a tin can. If the digger started having trouble breathing, he'd pull the rope and the can would hit the ground with a clang. That was the distress signal. The digger also had a sturdy hemp rope tied around his thighs. The moment anyone heard the signal, the guys upstairs would haul him back up. For an extra layer of safety, they'd rigged up a crude communication device to stay in touch with whoever was down in the tunnel. They'd been at it for 2 months now, and in just 2 more weeks, the tunnel would break through. But no matter how careful they were, accidents were never completely avoidable. That day, the prisoner standing watch by the window sensed something was off. He motioned for the others to come listen, but no one heard anything. So they sent one of the guys out, pretending he needed to use the latrine to scout around. Turns out the guards had just caught a prisoner trying to escape, and the noise they'd heard was gunfire. The escapee had been shot dead. Meanwhile, the digger down in the tunnel ran into trouble. The air was getting thin, and when he realized something was wrong, he yanked the signal rope. But the tin can landed on a blanket below and didn't make a sound. Everyone else in the cell was focused on what was happening outside. When the scout came back looking defeated, all eyes were on him. It wasn't until after they'd heard the full story that they remembered their man in the tunnel. They rushed to the entrance and called out through their makeshift intercom, but got no response. They quickly pulled the digger out. He'd passed out from lack of oxygen. They got him onto a bed right away. Luckily, nothing serious happened, and everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. During the day, while out on work detail, they'd sneak the bags of dirt into the vegetable garden. Fortunately, the prison required all inmates to wear military uniforms, and those heavy overcoats made perfect cover. They managed to keep this up safely for 2 whole weeks. The night of the escape was finally approaching, and everyone could hardly wait to get out of there. Inside the cell, the prisoners paced back and forth, their minds fixed on the night ahead. But then, out of nowhere, disaster struck. The warden burst through the door and announced that starting at 3 in the morning, there would be a roll call, and all prisoners were to be moved to new cells. Hearing this, they all exchanged stunned looks, barely able to believe it. But as prisoners, they had no choice. They had to pack up and head to the yard. If anyone was missing during roll call, the guards would launch a massive manhunt immediately. Time was running out, and their escape plan had just gone up in smoke. Looking at the new inmates being moved in, they couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. Mike tried to tell one of them about the tunnel when the guy's belongings spilled onto the ground, but the man couldn't understand a word Mike was saying. Left with no other option, they had to move along with everyone else to the new prison. As veteran inmates, they even got an audience with the warden, who'd looked through their files and knew these men all had a history of escape attempts. The warden even gave them a tour of this wartime prison. The place was a medieval-style castle with towering stone walls perched on top of a hill. The highest point of the wall stood a full 36 meters above the ground. The warden went into such detail deliberately, hoping to crush any thoughts of escape. But as John put it, prisons exist for the sole purpose of making people figure out how to break out of them. The moment they got inside, they started plotting their next escape. Even though the guards conducted frequent surprise inspections, it didn't dampen their determination one bit. One day, a group of prisoners set fire to a pile of books, causing quite a commotion. Watching the guards scramble around in chaos, John had a flash of inspiration. He'd just figured out a way to escape. Under John's lead, the prisoners started playing flutes around the prison. To make even more noise, some of them went out into the yard to add to the racket. The chaos quickly infuriated the warden, who ordered his men to confiscate all the flutes. But the prisoners didn't resist. They handed them over willingly, because this was all part of the plan. The warden looked at the pile of confiscated flutes with satisfaction. But just a few minutes later, the prisoners grabbed pots, pans, and anything else they could find, banging away and singing at the top of their lungs. Meanwhile, Mike and the others quietly began preparing for the escape. With all that noise, the guards sprang into action again. This time, they ordered all prisoners to assemble, and the warden came out personally as the guards started counting heads. But when they called John's name, there was no answer. Then from somewhere beyond the high walls came the sound of a flute. It was John. The warden, thinking he was trying to escape, panicked and sent men after him. But John stayed calm. To keep himself safe, he kept running and playing the flute as he went. While the prison descended into chaos, Mike and Paul slipped over to the castle wall and put their escape plan into motion. Mike secured the rope first and let Paul climb down. Then he quickly shut the window and hid. Only after the guards chasing John had moved on did Mike feel safe enough to open the window, grab the rope, and lower himself to the ground. The two didn't dare linger. They gathered their things and took off. Meanwhile, John had climbed up a steep wall. He played his flute again, signaling that he was staying put. He'd never intended to leave. Only by keeping the guards occupied could he buy Mike and the other man more time to get away. The warden shouted orders, but John ignored him completely. Left with no choice, the warden drew his gun and fired. Hit by the bullet, John glanced at his watch, figured they'd had enough time, and then let himself fall. Just then, a guard from inside the prison rushed over to report that 2 prisoners had escaped during the commotion. The warden finally understood what had happened. He immediately ordered a pursuit, but Mike and Paul were already long gone. The 2 made their way to a farmhouse, where the farmer not only didn't turn them in, but kindly fixed them a simple meal. After resting briefly and waiting for the search parties to pass, they continued on their journey. A few days later, Mike and Paul reached the border. Once they crossed it, they were finally out of danger.